And we talked about how to start, about our formation, LLC versus S Corp versus, your other choices. We talked about just all the operational things you need to do, and just really try to make a smart start. I had a family.
Yeah.
I had a house, I had obligations. I didn't want to go bet the farm on something. I wanted to do something that was going to be successful but safe too.
Yeah.
So we kind of padded our landing, so to speak, meaning I didn't just, take the last money I had, tell my boss I quit, and head out there and see if I could do it. We ramped it up while we were working.
So number one was you learned on somebody else's dime. Number two was very interesting. You did this ramp up phase before you kind of cut the strings with your employer. So you kind of explored the idea before you were kind of on your own 100%, which is a very interesting idea. So that's great. So just again to reiterate, you were really learning on the job, learning on somebody else's dime, learning the industry, as well as kind of giving yourself a soft takeoff. I noticed you talked about during your MBA you were kind of programming at night. Was that something you did, did you do that in school? Did you learn to program in school? And then
I actually never took one programming class.
That's what I thought.
Ever. I was self-taught.
Yeah.
It's because I loved it. I don't know why I loved it,
Yeah.
When I first figured out when I got the first application development environment down and started coding, it was just fun.
Yeah.
So that was just a natural thing to do.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. I have my wife and I have a women's apparel line, and she has no training in fashion design, and yet she gets critical acclaim for her work. And so the point there is that if you're passionate about something, you often go after it.
Right.
And so, but at the same time, it doesn't mean you quit your job, you throw everything out the door, and you say, I'm doing this 100% today. You do that soft landing,
right.
Soft takeoff, as well as maybe a soft landing if something goes wrong. So that's great. Well, let's talk about the next stage. So you got the idea together, you got a partner, and then you mentioned controlling growth and some of these other things. So what was next after, you've got a 12-month contract. What was the next stage of building a company?
Well, it was another thing that these mentors implanted early in me, and this just stuck with me, is that I never wanted to be on the line, so to speak. Meaning, in a service-based industry, every hour you work is an hour you get paid for. When you're gone from working, you're not getting paid.
Yeah.
That was important to me to realize that. And that doesn't make it, not a good industry to be in, but you have to have a plan for what you want. And you have lawyers and tax accountants and all these people that work hourly, and that's great. If that's what they love to do and they're passionate about it. For me, that was never the end game. Because you could get billable, I could fill up my, my work week 40 or 50 hours a week with one client, bam.
Yeah.
There's great money. I can make $150,000 a year doing that. But the goal was I wanted to be able to have other people work while I was able to engage in other things that I was passionate about. So whether that was recreation, which you get some of that, but it's also just other businesses and other things. So from the very beginning, we decided, we were going to hire people, and we were going to staff this organization so that it could run itself. That was our goal, is that eventually we would work ourselves completely out of a job at that company, and it would run and live all on its own. And that was important to start that way. So we started hiring those kinds of people. When you look at a programmer, you look at a salespeople, you look at all those different people, you're looking not just for someone to fill a seat and do the job, but you want someone who can do that job like you, as if you were there, but you're not. So that's the kind of quality of people we were looking to hire, was people that could interact with the customer like I would interact with them. Because the difference between an employee interacting with someone and an owner, that's a big difference there.
That's great.
So the early stages was just, it's crazy. I kind of feel like we're still in that, We're still trying to figure out marketing. It took us years to figure out how to hire the right salespeople. We had three failed attempts where we learned a lot. So it wasn't a failure, but we hired the wrong people that couldn't do the sales job for us. And now on this fourth one, he's doing awesome. We've had all kinds of people work for us in lots of capacity. You just learn so much from that. So we're figuring out who our customers are, where do they come from, why do they buy from us? What are the services we provide? What makes us unique, and why would they need us versus our competitors or other solutions that are out there. So you just, it takes years to really figure all of that out and to get to where you feel like you're doing it well.
I like how you said that it takes years to get there, because I agree with you. I think it does take time. You said a couple interesting things about this stage of early growth that I wanted to come back to. One is you mentioned you were figuring out who your customers were and what they wanted. How do you figure that out? What is that process like? Or do you have any tools, techniques? I mean, many times, when we were starting our business, people would say, well, who is your customer? And I would give them an answer, but frankly, I had no idea.
Right.
It was just a guess. But you have to get beyond guess phase really quick. So how did you do that?
It just takes time. I mean, I don't think there's any substitute for having a lot of customers and interacting with a lot of customers over time and seeing what they get from you and why you're different. You start out with one idea at the beginning of why you think they need you, and then you run your company, and it's important to check in and see, is that really why they're still coming to us? Is that why they buy from us? So I, like you, if I look back at my first answers to that question of who are our customers and why do they buy from me, if I go back 8 years, I don't think I had it right. I thought I knew it. You go to school all this time, you've done a lot of projects now, and you think you know, but you don't. I think I know now, but it's really it's a fun process to go through and figure out why they buy from you. And I think we understand pretty quick. I mean, it didn't used to be this way. When we'd meet with a client in that first 10 or 20 minutes in an interview, we're selling basically, but we're interviewing them too. We can tell really quick if they're going to be our customer or not now. I mean, I can identify them in 10 or 20 minutes if it's going to happen or not, versus you just understand your business enough and you understand their needs and their business enough that you can see if there's going to be a fit or not. And if there's not, you can tell right away and you can move on.
Great. I'm curious if this kind of knowledge you gathered, did it come from the sales process? Did it come from following up with your customers afterwards and saying, how was it? Did it come from, I mean, what part of the interaction did the real insights about who your customers were come from? Did it come from like blowing a project and saying, oh my gosh, this isn't us?
We've had some spectacular blow-ups. I mean, it's the truth of it. You can't pretend like you're going to run a business and have all successes, right? We've had some huge blow-ups that have been very expensive to us and very problematic to our customers. You learn from those probably more than you learn from the successes. Because the successes just go down, you put your people on the project, you run the invoices, they pay their invoices, you talk to them at the end, they're like, thanks, it worked great. You're like, okay, we're doing what we're supposed to. But when something blows up, you're really in there, you're learning what happened, how do we fail? We failed on communication, we failed in failing to identify what they really needed. Maybe we failed at the very beginning in that first 10-minute interview of it was a mismatch between what they fundamentally needed from us and who we fundamentally are. And so sometimes the failure can be traced all the way back to that first interaction. But you learn from all of those who those customers are. You just have to be involved in it. And that's I guess that's the danger now, is that I'm not as involved in it, You hope that your company can keep running and keep doing what it's supposed to be doing, but it used to be I did all the sales, me and my partner, and we did all the sales. But now we have salespeople that do the sales, and I meet with customers when there's problems and blow-ups. So, but I'm not as involved in that process to where I've got really a thumb on the pulse of it as much.
That's great.